One of the things that's really helped me a lot is I love solving problems. And I believe, in engineering, you can always solve a problem. And I think that's actually true in business as well. My name is Lisa Su, and I'm CEO of AMD.
Lisa Su is the CEO of AMD. She's an MIT PhD, she's a Taiwanese immigrant, and she really saved this historic Silicon Valley company, bringing it back from the dead and making it one of the most important chip companies in the industry.
I was born in Taiwan, and I came to the US when I was 2 with my parents. And growing up, my father used to quiz me with math tables at the dining room table. So that's how I first got into math. And when I was young, I liked to actually take things apart. My brother had a toy remote-controlled car, and it stopped working. And I was wondering, why did it stop working? And so I opened it up, tried to see what was going on, and there was like a wire that was loose, and we were able to get it back working again by putting it back together. I went to the Bronx High School of Science in New York, and I was surrounded by people who loved math and science and technology. I will say there was a part of me that wanted to be a concert pianist, but I don't think I was good enough to do that, so I ended up being an engineer. What I was really inspired by when I was a freshman at MIT is I went into a semiconductor line for the first time, and I saw how you made chips, and that was just so cool to me. That's really how I ended up being in semiconductors, having a summer job when I was a first-year college student. I was at IBM in the mid-90s. We were working at the forefront of semiconductor devices. Semiconductors were so interesting to me. I mean, I love the idea that you could, really make something that works. All of these transistors, these tiny little things that you could really put together in a chip. And so we worked on some of the newest innovations, things like copper interconnects, and new ways to make devices faster and less power and denser. In those days, people always said, is Moore's law ending? Are we not going to be able to make devices smaller? And so much of the challenge was how could we keep increasing performance and increasing capability while also making these devices smaller so we could put more transistors on a single chip. So that was the key thing, and we had a great team that was working on that. I joined AMD in 2012. I always knew about AMD as an important company in the industry, and it was an opportunity to work on a bigger platform. So I was very interested in joining AMD. There are a lot of things happening at that point in time. There was this whole revolution of where were PCs going, what was happening in mobile phones, what was going to be the next big tech going on. So I wanted to be at a company that really would work at the bleeding edge of technology.
When Sue came into the role, she had this really gargantuan task ahead of her. The company's stock had plummeted, a quarter of the workforce had been laid off, and she's really been able to pull off one of the greatest turnarounds in Silicon Valley history. Sue really boiled down her turnaround strategy to three things: building great products, focusing on customer relations, and the third thing is simplifying the company. So focusing on strengths like PC chips and data centers.
In the early days when I joined AMD, it was actually about getting customers and large partners to trust us and trust that we could develop the best technology in the world and that they could trust their roadmaps and their business with our technology. What I would say is, look, it's going to take us 5 years, but we will be best in class in the industry, and we're going to do it in these 3 steps with our new Zen architecture and our new microprocessors. And so it really is about a track record and doing what you say you're going to do and ensuring that we meet our commitments.
The people who know her also point to this unique mix of technical ability and people skills. And that's kind of what's driven her success. Being able to bring people together, problem solve, and focus on more than just the business.
What I've really enjoyed about being an engineer is really building products. That's what I love in life. It's really, how do you build great products? How do you see where your products go and, really make the world a better place? And the role of a CEO, that's one piece of it. That's not all pieces of it. We have many stakeholders. We have our employees, we have our board, our shareholders, our partners. And so it's really balancing not just the technology, but also balancing and ensuring that, we are really meeting all of our stakeholders' expectations. The thing about semiconductors and developing chips is you really do have to make bets 3 to 5 years in advance, and you have to think about, okay, where is the industry going, and how are we going to bring sort of new ideas to an industry that really has lots and lots of great companies and lots of smart people. So at AMD we spend a lot of time thinking about where is technology going in the future, what's going to be really important, what are the limiting factors, and how do we do something that nobody else can do. I've been in the semiconductor industry for the last 30 years, and sort of in the beginning people didn't really understand what semiconductors were for. They were kind of like underneath the surface. You knew something about chips and something about computers, but not exactly why they were important. I think what's been amazing over the last few decades, and especially even over the last 3 or 4 years, people now understand that semiconductors are essential. Like, you need chips in everything that you do, in every part of your life, in every part of the business, in every part of how we deliver, great healthcare and, great technology and great capabilities. And I think that's what makes it cool, is that, semiconductors are now something that everyone thinks about as being super important for our daily lives. We love seeing our products and technologies really make a difference in everyone's lives. I'm not sure I'm ready to talk about legacy. I think we have a lot to do right now to continue pushing the envelope on technology. Touching billions of people with AMD technology would be a wonderful thing.
Value Investing Academy. Yeah, on? Is it on? No, it's not on. So that's fine, right? So let me just make sure that this. Okay. Is it on? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So good. I'm going to do that again. So hi, this is Kaden from VIA Value Investing Academy. Now, thanks for joining another evening of our deep dive series, and obviously by just watching the video, giving credits to Forbes. Yeah, you will know that today we're going to talk about this company called AMD. Yeah, but before I start, let me just wrap the video up with 3 key strategies of AMD's one of the biggest turnaround. Yeah, so the first strategy, one of the gentlemen was saying that one of the key strategies is actually for AMD to build great products. And for the CEO, by the name of Lisa Su, she's constantly thinking about 3 to 5 years in advance. And point number 1 reminded me of Steve Jobs, and he once said that it's important for him or Apple to build great products so that we are proud to share this product to our friends and families. So this is one of the strategies that allow AMD to become a turnaround. And then the second strategy is actually customer and partner relationship. And one of the gentlemen in the video, he said that this Lisa is very good to bring people together. Not only the team together, but also their partners. yeah, by convincing AMD's partners to believe in AMD's roadmap. So that's point number 2. And point number 3 is simplifying the company. I suppose it means reorg, removing some of the excess fat so that eventually the company will do well. So I think just a short 6-minute video, I could learn 3 very important things. And if you look at these 3 things, it appears to be very simple. But from a business perspective, it's simple, but yet, how should I say, it's really wise. Yeah, it's really wise. Huh? Now, and if we look at the results of these 3 strategies, and if you look at this graph, you'll be able to see the market value between AMD and one of their closest competitor called Intel. By the way, this is the share price for 1 year, and the one in yellow, right, is actually AMD. So in ours, as long as the line is on top, it's better than the line at the bottom. So the one that is blue is Intel. So which means that in this 1 year period, the price of AMD has gone up by 37, whereas on the contrary, Intel has gone down by 14%. So this is 1 year. 1 year, AMD performed better than Intel. But let's look at a bit longer term. So if you look at a 5-year term, you can see same thing. The line for AMD is on top, and then for Intel is right at the bottom. And then during this 5-year period, AMD has went up by almost 600+%, and Intel has went down by 33. Intel used to be the market leader, right? And then right now, I think it took AMD a couple of decades for it to overtake Intel. I think the credit goes to this Lisa Su, right? Yep. So other than this AMD, and I think a couple of weeks ago we talked about NVIDIA. So let me just give it some arrow, right? Actually, it's not a couple of weeks ago, it's just 8 days ago. We talked about NVIDIA, and then 3 weeks ago we talked about Adobe, right? 4 weeks ago we talked about this company, actually a software company called Unity Stock, followed by Meta, Facebook, and then Palantir, as well as this C3AI. And the reason we talk about such companies is because right now there's so much hype about AI companies. Yeah, so we want to share another perspective because most of the perspective out there in the social media is always talking about, come, let's buy this, let's buy that. I think we want to provide a more factual, as much as we can, a neutral perspective about, what is this AI company, NVIDIA or whatever that we're talking about? Is it investable from a very scientific, rational, and mathematical perspective rather than a hype? Huh? Yep. So in case you want to know more about some of the things that we have done, yep, I just need your help to, scan on this QR code. Now, in case you are watching this on a laptop and then your phone is beside you, right? What you need to do is just pull out your phone and then scan this QR code. Once you scan this QR code, a message will pop out. You just need to click subscribe. Or you can visit our YouTube site at youtube.com/Value Investing Academy. And you can see there are plenty of things over here. So most of the analysis, which is our deep dive, is you can see them, right, by clicking on this tab. Yeah, so remember, VIA, Value Investing Academy. So let's go deep dive into this company called AMD. But before that, as usual, you know our ritual, right? So I'm going to talk about disclaimer. So remember, tonight's session is solely to illustrate the application of value investing methodologies and various valuation methods in the context of real-life companies. And of course, tonight is AMD. So remember, under no circumstances does any of the information provided in this AMD case study represent a recommendation for you to buy, sell, or hold any stock. It's because we do not take into account all of your individual characteristic profile and or risk appetite of a given investor. So remember, in no event shall VIA or me and Hillary be liable to any one of you for damages of any kind arising out of the use of the information shared tonight. So take note, neither my Kinesis Investments, VIA, nor me and Hillary are operated or affiliated with any broker, dealer, or financial advisor. Okay, so as usual, I'm going to pass all the hard work, right, to Hillary. Come, Hillary, over to you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our another deep dive series. And tonight we are talking about AMD, but at the same time, we will also compare against NVIDIA. Even though we already talked about NVIDIA in the last session, but why are we comparing with AMD? Because if you have gone through with our deep dive series, you'll notice that we actually covered three main semiconductor companies, which is Intel, NVIDIA, and how can we miss out AMD? Because right now, almost all of our electronic devices are using chips. So that's why chips is now slowly becoming a very important part of our life. So with that, most people might be curious that is it now the time to invest in one of these chip companies which bring us into AMD? So with that, let's jump right in. So this one caught my attention is because this news comes out that AMD reveals a new AI chip to challenge NVIDIA dominance in the AI market. So what chip is this? Is this chip MI300X? So is this chip that is shown by Lisa Su here. And she says that this one is the strongest challenge to NVIDIA in this AI market. So with that, here raised the question is that, does MI300 will be the chance to chip into NVIDIA's AI share? So can this chip actually really compete against NVIDIA in the AI market? Because in our last deep dive session, we see how futuristic is NVIDIA's plan about this AI. So with that, we are going to deep dive further into AMD to see can this chip or maybe some of their future plans compete against NVIDIA. So before that, all of these things are about chips. So we have to do some groundwork to understand what type of chips is this, because AI chips is a very general term. CPU is a chip, GPU is a chip, and FPGA is a chip. You might be wondering, what is FPGA? We will cover this later. Okay, so first off, let's look at the stages of artificial intelligence. So the first stage is artificial intelligence, followed by machine learning and deep learning. We have actually heard some of these terms before, but what does this actually mean? So for artificial intelligence, it actually means that the robots or the machines, they can actually mimic like a human, like they can see, they can reason, and then perform certain human-like tasks. Like when we program them, then they can work on their own. These are the early stages of AI. Then next up is until machine learning. So here is a second stage of AI where they actually input data into the software, into the robotic system, and then they will start to make decisions, make analysis based on those data with minimal human intervention. But for artificial intelligence, we still need to tell the robots or the devices what to do. But here, we just input the data, then the software or the robots, they will try to make sense of what is the data, and from there, they take action on their own. And now, here, deep learning, this one is another level where they don't need any human intervention. They just try to make up a decision like, what is this data all about? So in short, deep learning enables all these devices to solve much more complex problems as if they have the capability to think. So these are the three levels of artificial intelligence. And for tonight, we will mainly look into machine learning. Okay, so about machine learning, we'll look through the machine learning workflow, because if you read some of the articles, they will mention two main machine learning workflow. One is the training and one is inference. So when I first do this research, I was like thinking, what is the difference between these two? So here, AI chips are actually categorized into these two main workflow. So let's look at training chips first. So training chips, as the term means, that they are designed to train the AI models. So actually, all these chips are trained to process a large amount of data and also to build a framework or a model around it. So this requires the chip to be able to perform at a high performance, at high speed, so that it will not take up a lot of time, and they need to have a larger memory in order to store all those data to process all this data. So here is a graphic diagram. So let's look at the bottom here. First, we input the data, then we set certain algorithm, and you will see here a lot of weird words. So here on the top is actually the software to run all these algorithms. Then the bottom here is actually the chips, the type of chips. Later, we will explore what are these short form actually means. And once the data has been processed or gone through, then the AI model will be trained. So as if this is a school for the chips. Then next, they will move on to the next part, which is the inference chips. So on here, they are actually running on a trained AI model, as if that all these chips are being trained and now they are being put into usage. So they actually require much more power efficiency, because after we have already studied in school, when we go to work, the boss will expect us to perform at high efficient, right? So this is why there's a difference between these two chips. So here is another diagram where you put in the data, and because they are already trained, so they try to make sense what does the data actually means, and then they will generate the outcome, whether is it in terms of text, data, video, or audio as such. So these are the two main differences of the chips, which is a training chip or an inference chip. Okay, so now let's look at the types of AI chips. So there are actually 4 types for tonight. The main one is, the one are CPU, GPU, FPGA, and ASICs. So let's look at each of them. So in short, CPU, which is much more common for us, is actually the brain of the PC. So that means I just type in a command, and it immediately shows me the things that I want, like for example, web browsing, spreadsheet calculations, very simple task. But for GPU, when we mention GPU, first thing that comes to our mind is graphic cards. But if you watch our last session, we actually explained about this term called parallel processing, which means that there's a big task, then they will break down into smaller tasks, and then they will separate into different cores to do it so that it will speed up the process. Imagine when you play a video game where the graphic is slow, you'll be like, why is the graphic so slow? Why is it hanging? But here comes GPU, where it speeds up the process so that the gaming experience will be accelerated. So as such, GPU, because of this high speed, so GPU are mostly used to training the AI models. Next is the FPGA. So this one is mainly about programmable chips. So that means after the chip has been installed onto the devices, the developers or the software trainers, software engineers, they can still reprogram the chip for certain functions. So it's ideal for inferencing on trained models. And whereas ASICs is mainly very specific for AI models, which is used in training and inferencing. So, but for tonight, we will mainly look into GPU and FPGA. Okay, so now let's look a bit like what are the applications for all these AI chips. So one of the main applications is that they will take in a lot of data, and then they will try to analyze it, process it to make sense of what does the data works. Because if we are going to use our human power, it will take a lot of time. But if we put every data into the AI chips to help us to speed up the process, this one will help us to speed up our efficiency of work as well. Okay, so once the data has been processed, then they can actually do detailed data analysis on it, and even maybe make predictions or model out of this data. And finally, all those data can be used to do automation, which speeds up the operation workflow. Okay, so with that, let's look into AMD's qualitative analysis. Okay, so AMD is actually a fabless semiconductor company. When AMD was initially set up, it was actually a fab company. That means they also design and make their own semiconductor chip. But then they actually spin off their manufacturing site to become global foundries. So right now, they only focus on chip design, software support, and also marketing. So the products are actually separated into hardware offerings, which are all those chips, and also they offer some software solutions we will explore further. Okay, so now the products are mainly used in all these devices and also markets. And it was incorporated since 1969, which is a much longer history compared to NVIDIA. And they actually gone public in 1972, and this is their ticker symbol, AMD. Okay, so now let's have a quick recap on what semiconductor ecosystem is. So there's a fabless, which they only design chips, and this is where NVIDIA and AMD is situated. Then followed by foundry. So this one, they are purely making the chips. And IDM is actually, they not only design, but they also make their own chips, which is Intel. And followed by this one, OSAT. This one is mainly to test the semiconductor chips after being produced. So after the chip has been manufactured, they wanted to know whether is it working fine. So this is where OSAT comes in. Okay, so when we go to AMD website and we click under the products, we will see these 4 main categories. So what does they actually mean? So let's look at the first three. Processor, in short, is the brain of the PC. And under AMD, they have actually a lot of brands. So when you look through the brands, you might get headache like, what is this chip for? What are their usages? But for processor, their main brand is called Ryzen. Then followed by GPU. So for GPU, it's mainly for graphics, and the brand name is known as Radeon. Then followed by adaptive SoC. So SoC actually is a short form for system on chip. So what is a system on a chip? So here the diagram actually depicts it. So it actually integrates a lot of different components onto a single chip or the electric circuit. Like for example, processor, graphic cards, accelerators. I/O is actually input to output. That means they receive data and then they output the data. And also, these chips actually provide a customization options for specific applications, and they are mainly used in smartphones, tablets, and also consumer electronics. So as if that you just put in one chip and then all these devices can work on its own. Then followed by FPGA, which we actually explored earlier. So these are actually programmable integrated circuits. So they actually allow customization and also optimization. So they are mainly used in scientific research, aerospace, and defense science. So when you see these two, you might be thinking that they look the same. So what is the main difference? The main difference is that for processor, they are actually fixed. They cannot be customized. But then certain applications, when they install onto the devices, they might need to do some changes. So this is where FPGA comes in, where the software engineers can actually do some customization or optimization on the chips in order for the devices to work. Okay, next, let's look at accelerators, SOMs, and also smart NICs. So accelerator here is actually used for high-performance computing, which is mainly for artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning, or deep learning. So they are actually GPU accelerators, and their brand is actually AMD Instinct. And system on modules. So from here, it looks similar to system on chip, but actually, they are actually a pre-designed compact chips to be used on robotics, Internet of Things, edge AI devices. So these chips actually is being pre-designed already. Then they just integrate it into their existing system, such as these robots, for them to work compared to smartphones or tablets. And finally, smart NIC is actually mainly for network performance, which we will cover about data centers. So you'll be able to see some of the chips. They actually have some names like Xilinx, which we will also cover later. This is actually the company that was being acquired by AMD. Okay, so now we have done with the hardware. Let's look at what are the software or where are the chips being used. So for market platforms, the chips are mainly used in these 6 main market platforms. And the chips are actually offered these industry solutions, these various industry solutions. So that means they not only design the chips, but they also actually offer to design the industry solutions as well. Okay, so now here's the exciting part. Let's look at the crystal ball of AMD. Okay, so first is their next 5-year strategic pillars on how they intend to move the company forward. So this is what they have in mind. So tonight we will not cover all, we will only cover certain parts, but then they actually mentioned that for the next 5 years, they will focus on hardware, data center, advancing pervasive AI, software, and also intellectual properties. So for tonight, we will first cover pervasive AI. Okay, so this is how the pervasive AI that AMD had in mind. So they actually aim to use and make the AI technology to be more seamlessly integrated into our lives. So some of the examples are such as the healthcare and life sciences, digital homes, transportation, smart city, smart retail. So you can see that almost all of these things will be involved with AI. So with that, they already mentioned the different types of chips that will be used in these different areas. So you can see they are covering a wide range of it. Okay, so as such, in order for them to move forward into this pervasive AI, they actually included training and inference across cloud, which is the data center, the edge AI, which means the devices that is that is being used by handheld or maybe like the monitoring system as such. And these two are actually referring to the hardware, and this one is referring to the software. So for the hardware, there actually has a range of chips that have outlined as well, which here is mainly for PCs, AI and sensor fusion, server, AI inference optimized solutions, this one accelerators, and also this one is for the data center as well. So they actually outline perfectly what hardware will be used in what area. Okay, then we will also cover about what companies they actually acquired, because in NVIDIA also acquired 2 AI startups. So what does AMD acquired? They acquired first Xilinx, then Pensando. So let's look at what are these 2 companies. So for Xilinx, they are actually the leading provider of the FPGA. So FPGA was actually not produced by AMD, but actually they acquired Xilinx for this technology. So the main purpose is to able to modify the functionality after the chip has been deployed. Deployed here means being set up onto the software and used. So these are mainly used in data centers, telecommunications, automotive, aerospace, and also industrial sectors. And FPGA can also be used in AI and ML because they are able to accelerate the computer-intensive workload. So they acquired in February 2022 to strengthen their high-performance computing portfolio. So here the diagram actually shows that which area does the high-performance computing is being used. Then let's look at Pensando. So Pensando itself, they are actually software-defined infrastructure for data centers and cloud environment. So in short, they intend to transform and modernize the data center architectures. Last time, for data center, they have a lot of data, but then if you imagine with all those data to use human power to do it, it will take a long time. So with that, they intend to accelerate the process. So here, they actually bring the networking and also security to the cloud environments with this. So they acquired this company in May 2022 to further expand their data center solutions. So this is the reason why AMD decided to acquire these 2 companies, is because they have the main focus going into data center, which nicely brings us up to the next point into data center and cloud, where they have the intention to expand their data center leadership. So these are some of the ideas that they have listed out as well. Okay, so before we go deep dive into it, let's look more into what is actually a data center. So data center actually comprises of 3 parts, where they actually compute, that means they do processing, calculations, and then networking is to connect between PCs. So last time, if we are to transfer one data to another PC, we will use a hardware or pen drive to transfer from one computer, bring it to another computer to transfer the data. But right now, if we have cloud, such as Google Drive, we just easily upload all those data into Google Drive. Then we will go to another PC at another room and then access the data from the same Google Drive, which is much more convenient, and we do not have the need to use the hardware drives. And finally, storage. So usually we will all put most of our data storage into Google Drive, Microsoft Azure, or as such. So with that, data centers are actually used in all these various areas where you can see that they not only process, they allow networking and also storage of data. So with that much amount of data, how is it possible that the data center are able to work? Which now they are trying to incorporate AI into these data centers. So for Meta, they said that by incorporating this AI, they're able to have a 31% cost savings compared to the current design that they have. And for Alphabet, they say that it will be able to help them to increase their efficiency and also by using the renewable energy. And for Microsoft, they are using AI to help them to analyze the data and also generate alerts during safety incidents. And for Gartner, they said that this will be able to help them to increase their operational efficiency. So you can see that by having AI incorporated into the data center, it actually speeds up all this process so that when people access their data onto a data center, they are able to do it in a much more efficient and also much more accelerated manner. Okay, so now let's look here. Earlier on, we explained what is artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning as such. But then when we incorporated the big data together with deep learning, what will we get? So here, we get that by using an AI to do with all this big data, we will be able to identify or search the patterns from a list of the data that we have. And from there, we can actually predict or maybe model based on the data that we have. And from then, we can also widen the alarm times, or maybe we can also predict what the customer likes and improve the customer experience. And as such, when they generate the output, they can generate in terms of text, audio, or video as such. So this is one of the reasons why currently the trend is moving towards incorporating AI into data centers. Okay, so now what is AMD's strategy into expanding their data center? So here, this is an extract that I got from their annual report. It's a bit wordy, so I highlighted the main part. They said that to expand their data center presence, they offer the strongest portfolio for the data center computing solution, which is here. So they have actually plans for their CPU, for their high-performance computing, for the cloud computing, for machine learning and AI, and also networking. So this is the reason why they actually acquired Pensando. Okay, so now here's the most interesting part of the night. Comparison between AMD and NVIDIA. So now let's have a quick look at their AI plans. So for AMD and NVIDIA, AMD is initially mainly focusing on computer chips like the processors. So last time when we purchased computer, it's either Intel or maybe AMD, but AMD is not that famous during that time. But right now they are moving towards data centers. Then you see the word here, adaptive, which will explain later what does it mean. So these are some of the plans that AMD has in their AI. Whereas for NVIDIA, last time, they are more famous about their GPUs, which is their graphic cards, and also gaming. And now they are moving towards AI. And here, accelerating, we will explain later as well. So here are the plans that they have for AI, and we have actually deep dive in depth about these plans in our previous deep dive session. Okay, so for the market presence, AMD is actually in a much more broader market presence, and they actually are the king in the gaming console processor because most of the gaming console processors actually uses AMD chips. Currently, they are trying to catch up to provide GPU for the AI and ML market. And we can see that for their 2022 revenue, which this diagram, I got it from CNBC, most of their revenue are actually coming from CPU. Only a mere 8% of the market share actually comes from GPU. Then the remaining is the FPGA. Whereas for NVIDIA, they are actually the market leader in GPU because the GPU are used in crypto mining, AI, ML, and even gaming for graphic purpose. And they intend to further expand this into data centers where they offer the hardware, the GPU, and also the software, which in this term called accelerated libraries. Okay, so let's look at the data center CPU market share. Because currently, most of the data center are still using CPU. GPU, later we will explore that why CPU is still the main one. So from here, there's a comparison between 2021 and 2022. So even though Intel is currently the market leader in CPU, but we see that their market share is actually dropping, and it actually goes to AMD. So if AMD continues to work well, maybe one day they will take over Intel in terms of their market share. Okay, so here another thing is that AMD's AI chip can actually match NVIDIA's offering. So what does this actually mean? Here it means that AMD AI chip is actually as fast as NVIDIA. However, the key thing is that the software is key in LLM. So LLM is actually a short form for large language modeling. In short, it's something like ChatGPT. Okay, so here we will look into two parts. In order to design the chips, there are actually two parts. One is known as the hardware infrastructure design, and the term is called computing approach. And then another one is the software support the chip. So here for computing approach, AMD is actually using adaptive computing. So this one is a bit mouthful. So in short, for me to understand is that the hardware chip is actually designed to be customizable like Android, which means that there's actually a backdoor for developers to adjust or customize it. Whereas for NVIDIA, they are using accelerating computing to design their chips. So here is another very mouthful explanation. So in short, it's actually optimized for speed. Like iOS is already optimized. There's no backdoor. So that means once they design it, that's how it works. So this is how I see it. So we can see that actually both companies, they have different approach in designing their chips. AMD is more wide range. That means people can adjust, adapt. And when we look through their hardware chips, we see that a portion of their chips are actually programmable, they are customizable. Whereas for NVIDIA, their actually main focus is into GPU, where they focus on delivering speed. If you remember earlier about the AI chips, about training chips, and also inference chips, because currently AI is still at its early age, so they need the chips to train as much AI models as possible. So in order for them to train it, they need to have a large amount of data to train all those models. So this is where the speed comes in. But once the AI models are being trained, when they're doing inferencing, then they need to have a power efficiency chips to do that. So this is the reason why NVIDIA currently is focusing on accelerating, whereas AMD is focusing on adapting. And next, in order to run this, they also need to have a software support. So the software support, this is the rough definition of it, but in short, it actually means that it is actually a framework to facilitate the software to run the chips. So in classic computing, last time, we will put in the data, and then we will need to do some manual training for the data to make sense for the system, to understand what is this data all about, then they will be able to generate an output. But right now for machine learning, we just simply put in the data, there's already an existing library or maybe an algorithm, then it will be able to try to make sense of the data, and then they will easily generate the output. So there will be minimal human intervention for machine learning. So this is the difference between the computing approach and software support. Okay, so now let's look at the training chips comparison. So here, AMD, this is the chip that AMD is competing against NVIDIA. So the reason they are competing is because these two chips are actually designed mainly for large language modeling, which here is training on the AI models, such as generative AI. And here, it actually means that currently, even though NVIDIA GPU is being more desirable compared to AMD, however, NVIDIA is just one of the choice of the training chips for AI. So the article actually advises that should not blindly only using NVIDIA, because if the chip functionality is on par, then people might consider about price comparison, whether which chip is cheaper, which chip is much more able to produce more value. And also chip availability, because if let's say there's a chip shortage and the people need to use the chip to design their devices, their hardware, how are they going to do it? They will have to find a substitute for it. So this is where AMD might have a chance to chip into the share of NVIDIA. Okay, so now let's look at the numbers. Okay, so for here, we'll look at AMD's business segment. So business segment is actually for the company to record how they actually generate their revenue or their sales. So AMD has 4 main business segments, which is data center, client, gaming, and embed. So in short, data center is for data center. Client is actually for notebook, PCs, gaming are gaming devices and also console. And embed. Embed here actually means the devices that are designed to do specific tasks, such as medical monitoring devices, automotive systems, Internet of Things devices, and also industrial machineries. So these are known as embed. Okay, so for FY 2022, AMD actually generated 23.6 billion. So this is how much of each of these business segments is contributing. So we can see that each of the segments are actually contributing quite equally. Then followed by geographical. So most of the revenue actually comes from US and also China. And Japan took the 3rd place, followed by Taiwan and as such. However, as we discuss about this topic regarding the CHIP Act or the CHIP sanction war between US and China, so will this portion be affected? This is something that we, as investors, we should take note of. Okay, so now their latest quarter revenue is as such. So from here, we will be able to see a much different picture compared to their annual FY 2022 revenue generations, where we see that there's actually a large shrinkage in their client revenue, but a bigger increment in their gaming revenue. But if we look closely, we actually see that there's a 65% drop in their client segment, but then their embedded segment actually increased about 163%, which is quite a lot. Okay, so now let's look at their annual revenue trend. So from here, we can see that early days it's being a bit flat, but then since 2021, it has been moving quite incremental. Then, however, even though the annual revenue is increasing on a positive trend, but then when we look at their quarterly revenue, it's actually in a slightly decreasing trend. So why is this so? Then we look into their segment results. When we compare between the first quarter of 2023 to the first quarter of 2022, we notice that actually the client has a sharp dip, because in our previous session, we actually discussed that there was a downturn in PC sales. So as such, this segment was being affected. However, the embedded segment actually increases about 163. So they managed to offset the drop of client. Okay, so next we will also look to earnings per share. So here, earnings per share actually means that for every one share that an investor purchases, how much of the earnings can the company generate? So this is their annual trend, and we see that in the early days, AMD is actually in a loss. But then since 2017 onwards, they have been on a positive increasing trend before a sharp downturn in 2022. So as such, when we look into their quarter earnings per share, the same is similar to their revenue, where in 2021 and 2020, until 2021, it was increasing before there was a sharp downturn, because they were also being affected by the PC sales slump. So as such, we will also look further into their annual report. So when we look at the mathematical formula, earnings per share is actually directly correlated to net income, which is their earnings. So from here, we see that it has been decreasing for quarter to quarter. And then we will also look at their expenses. So here, cost of goods sold actually means that the direct cost used to produce the chips. Then operating expense is actually referring to the admin expenses or marketing expenses, R&D expenses as such. So when we compare from quarter to quarter, we don't see a very sharp increment or sharp drop for their expenses. So the main cause for the net income to drop severely for Q1 of FY 2023 was because there was a drop in their revenue. So as such, even though the expenses does not change much, but then the revenue drop will definitely affect their earnings. So as such, the EPS was also affected. Okay, so now we will also look at their cash flow. So cash flow here, we will first look at their operating cash flow. So operating cash flow here actually means that the cash flow is actually generated from normal business activities, such as selling the chips or maybe the software solution for the chips. Okay, so in short, when it's positive, that means there's cash coming in from the business. If it's negative, it means that the company is actually bleeding money to keep the operation running. So here is the zero line. So we can see that in the early days, AMD is actually bleeding money to keep the operation running. But luckily for them, things turns better, and we can see that since 2016, it is slowly becoming positive before a sharp increment from 2018 onwards. And this is because since 2017, they launched their main product, which is the Zen processor, the CPU, that turned the tide around. Okay, so now let's also look at their quarter result for their cash flow operations. So we can see that for the past 3 quarters, there has a bit downturn, but then the company is still able to bring in cash from their operations. And then we will also look at their free cash flow. So here, free cash flow, it is actually the cash that the company has after they minus off their operating cash flow, after the capital expenditure was being minus off from operating cash flow. So here, capital expenditure, as you can see here being written down, is that the expenses used to purchase the assets more than 12 months. Okay, so here's the zero line, as similar to operating cash flow is also below the zero line, but then since 2019 onwards, it has been on a positive trend. So let's look at their latest quarter. So from quarter to quarter, we also see that even though there was a slowdown trend, but then they are still able to be in the positive. Okay, so now we've looked at their earnings, their revenue, and also their cash flow. How about their debt situation? So here, debt, this is the formula for debt. And based on value investing philosophy, we wanted to see this ratio less than 0.5, which means that for every $100 of the equity that the company has, they should not borrow more than $50 of the debt. So here, this is the debt to equity ratio of the AMD. And we can see that in the early days, AMD is actually incurring very high debt, which was being shown that they're actually they are having some cash flow negative. But then as days pass on, we see that since 2019, they managed to bring down their debt below 0.5 and keep as flat as possible. And it's been below 0.5. So 0.5 is actually this red line. And for their latest quarter result, we also see that it's actually being quite flat at 0.05, which means that AMD is actually quite low debt currently. Okay, so all the good things being said, so are there any risk for AMD? So first off, they rely actually 100% on TSMC to help them to manufacture the chips. So currently, US and China, they are still having the semiconductor chip war. So when there's chip sanction on China, this will also affect the revenue of AMD. But when we see the business segment of AMD, they are actually equally shared between 4 segments. And next, the semiconductor industry is actually cyclical in nature. And we actually discussed that there's a PC sales back in 2022. And all of these are actually discussed in detail in our previous session in NVIDIA. So if you are curious or interested about it, you can also click on the deep dive, on this deep dive, and to watch more. And here, AMD is actually not yet a market leader in CPU or GPU at the moment because, first of all, branding. When you mention about CPU, first thing people think about is Intel before AMD. And when you mention GPU, then people will think about NVIDIA than AMD, because there's a friend actually shared that when they wanted to buy a graphic card, they would prefer an NVIDIA, but the price is so high, then they may consider AMD. So currently, AMD is still not yet a market leader in either of them. But if the performance of the chips are as good as these two companies, maybe one day they will be able to overtake them. And also, we will also explore about this software training and support for the chips. So here, I managed to find out these articles, and it's a bit wordy, so I highlighted the main thing. So in short, it means that in order for them to use an existing model, they need to spend a lot of time and effort to use it. But then people just want to plug in the chip and then use it immediately, and they don't want to spend time to train it. And small changes on the software will definitely affect the performance. And here, it actually means that it's also a hassle for them to retrain or re-optimize a new chip for an existing model. So with that, because currently, when people mention about the chips for AI model, they will think about GPU. So I decided to ask Google to see that which GPU library is widely used. So currently, they say that NVIDIA is a popular choice. And because the GPU is best supported for the machine learning libraries, here is actually referring to the software. So with that, AMD might have a tough fight to have users change to their GPU, because the existing GPU software framework is mainly trained on NVIDIA library. So with that, even though AMD will have a tough fight with NVIDIA to compete against the GPU, but earlier on we discussed that if let's say the chip functionality is on par, and if they have a price concern or there's a shortage of chip, maybe people may consider to use AMD chip instead. So although AMD appears to look like a black horse in this AI chip war, maybe they might be able to turn the tide around when the situation changes. So to conclude all for tonight's sharing, is that AMD actually provide a very wide product offerings and also the industry solutions. And they have actually a very detailed plan on their AI strategy and how to expand their data center. And this MI300X AI chip was being tested to be as good as NVIDIA's. And definitely for the financial part, they have a very low debt. However, the cons are they are currently not yet a market leader for GPU and also CPU. And their quarterly revenue has actually declining, but this might turn around if, let's say, the PC sales pick up again. And the semiconductor industry is actually cyclical in nature, and definitely because AMD is actually a fabless semiconductor company, they rely 100% on TSMC to manufacture the chips. So with that, I hope that you have enjoyed tonight's sharing, and tonight's session is much more enlightening compared to what NVIDIA has in store. So with that, I'll pass back to Caden. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Now, before I start, I just want to make sure that you are able to see this graph and then lines on my screen, right? Right? Okay, good. So let me just share with you what these two lines means. But before I start, just to let you know that because there's so much talk about AI, majority of the people who may not know as much as Hillary does, and then people start jumping to AI companies. So if you pay attention to what Hillary was saying, you realize that there's a lot of technical things. Yeah, technical things. And by the way, Hillary is a chemistry graduate. Her background is chemistry. She's trying to explain to you all this technical stuff in the simplest way possible. CPU, GPU, right? Yep. So let's come back to here. Now, if you look at the graph over here, you will see two lines. Now, one is a bit purplish, right, which is the bottom line. Is it purplish? Where my mouse is purplish, right? So maybe I use some annotation, right? Okay, annotation, you can see this is the purple line. Yeah, purple line. Now, this purple line, right, is called ROIC, which simply means return on invested capital. Now, as the name implies, if let's say ROIC is 10%, if I could explain the simplest way possible, it's simply 10% is 10 divided by 100, right? It simply means that if someone invested $100 into a business, they want a return of $10, which is why return of $10 on this invested capital, which also simply means that the higher the ROIC, the better it is. Yeah. Now, and then the other one is called WACC, which stands for weighted. It's a bit technical, just hang on there, right? Weighted average cost of capital. Now, in short, remember just now, Hillary was talking about a debt to equity ratio. Now, in order for any business to grow, usually they will borrow. So it's either they borrow a lot or borrow very little. And then not only they don't borrow only from one source. They borrow from multiple sources. So when we say WACC, it stands for weighted average cost of capital. It simply means that when the company, such as AMD, borrow money, borrow capital, there is a cost to it. And because they borrow from various sources, there's somehow an average cost of the borrowing. So in short, the higher the ROC, the better. The lower the WACC is better. So ideally, right, we want this purple line to go up. So now you see the purple line has gone up, right? Yeah, so when it's gone up, it's a good sign. And then we want this WACC to go down, right? It didn't drop a bit, but it stays a bit flat. Huh? So assuming that it's going to stay flat for a short while. So do you realize that, yes, the ROIC gone up in 2021. Now, bearing in mind that somewhere in 2020 and 2021 is a bit extraordinary times because of the COVID. If you recall, during COVID time, it's quite hard for you to buy a laptop, you know. By the way, for this laptop, HP, right, I bought it during the so-called endemic part. Well, but the pandemic part, it was really so difficult. Yeah, but do you realize that life has sort of gone back to normal, 2013? Yeah, so I think during this period, we will expect what? We expect PC sales to shoot up. Everybody wanted work from home. Yep. So of course, then PC need a chip, whether is it the CPU, whether is it the GPU. Yeah, but unfortunately, the demand for the laptop has dropped. So do you realize that as the world went from pandemic to endemic and then to a normal life, right, which is 2023, do you realize that the demand dropped? Of course, if the PC demand drops, yeah, then the rest of our chips will drop. Yeah, so do you realize that it's quite extraordinary period? So we cannot use this like 2-3 years to extrapolate that in the next 10 years, it's going to be like the pandemic year. Everybody need like 3 laptops. Yeah. So you see this line has dropped, and right now it drops below this WACC. So now the question is 1 year down the road, how is it going to be like? It's quite difficult. Yeah, but let me just show you this can, right? Actually, a moment ago before the YouTube live start, I went downstairs. Yeah, as compared to this. So for example, if you make $100 from Coca-Cola, from selling Coca-Cola, and you make $100 from selling GPU or CPU or whatever yeah, actually the $100 from here, the $100 made from this PC, they're the same. So it doesn't matter that, you have to show off to your friends that, I just make $100 from CPU. It doesn't matter. Or I tell my friends that, I just make $100 from selling Coke. Yeah, but the money are all smelling the same, right? So it doesn't matter. So before I continue, I just want to let you know that this is really a very technical subject. So unless you're engineers, computer science, and you're highly techy, you may want to consider something as simple as a Coke, yeah, or a supermarket or Sheng Siong. Yeah, so you don't have to force yourself to participate, right, in this frenzy where everybody talks about AI. So be very careful of this, huh? So I'm just going to shift my screen back to the slide, yeah, where Hillary has put up. So let me just put it back again on full screen. Yeah, you should be able to see a full screen mode. Huh? Now, this was one slide that Hillary had talked about. Now, if you look at all these 3 points, let me highlight to you this. First point, remember, potential risk. It's not perfect, Yeah. So this company, AMD, has to rely on TSMC. Now, but before I carry on, remember, AMD has to rely on TSMC. The next player is Intel, right? Previously, Intel has their own like manufacturing factories. So they produce their own chips. So right now, they are already outsourcing some of the chips. And guess who can they outsource to? TSMC. So before I carry on, yeah, so remember, AMD outsourced to TSMC, Intel outsourced to TSMC. Now, if you're thinking about AMD or if you're thinking Intel, if you find this too difficult, do you realize that there's one common player that gathers the orders from AMD and Intel? So that is TSMC. Now, give a guess, why US is so interested in Taiwan? Do you think they are interested in the president, Tsai Ing-wen? I don't think so, right? They're interested in TSMC. So let's get real, Yeah. So imagine if US is able to find some way to make TSMC theirs. They will basically dominate. Intel is ours, AMD is ours, TSMC is ours. But of course, China will not let that happen, right? Yeah, which is why there is this feud between the China and US. Yeah, and I think there was one article, I think a couple of months ago, right? I can't remember who said that, but I think somebody in US under the Biden administration, right? He was saying something like, if one day the China attack Taiwan, they will destroy TSMC. Wow, that's such a big thing to say, right? But anyway, putting the politics aside, if out of these 3 that I want to consider, I think, just my guess, right? I think TSMC will be a better bet. Okay, so that's point number 1. This is just my personal bias, right? So the second thing is, remember, semiconductor is cyclical. Remember, pandemic was good, and then right now it's not so good. Now, this has to be very careful. So even though the share price of AMD has went up higher than Intel, but that is the price. That's the stock price. But no one is a stock price predictor, right? So we need to look at the business. If you look at the business, can you see this bar? Now, if Hillary didn't show me this bar, I would thought that the bar of AMD is taller than Intel. But do you realize that in terms of revenue share, in absolute dollars, Intel could still speed and then kill off AMD. Yeah, so Intel is still really big in the market of CPU, not GPU. So it's not a market leader in CPU because Intel is here. It's not a market in GPU because NVIDIA is here. So they are neither left nor right. I think as much as they can, they want to overtake Intel. But if you look at this bar, I think it's going to take a while. Yeah, unlikely it's not going to happen like overnight or maybe the next 1 year. Would they ever overtake NVIDIA? It's hard to say. So I want you to imagine that you're investing in a company that you find very hard, not predictable. Whether can they overtake this, overtake that. But I'm just guessing, right? I think in the next 5-10 years, I think Coca-Cola should still be the market leader in the world of cola versus a Pepsi or Dr. Pepper or something like this. Okay, so we want something predictable, because if the company's business is predictable, the share price is predictable, then our income is predictable. So let's go back to here. This is also another very nice representation of what Hillary has shared. Where does their money come from? Right, AMD. So can you see here? Gaming, client, data center, embedded. Yeah. So I think it's almost equally spread. I'm quite surprised that the margin is quite thin, 5.6%. I would expect the margin to be like 10%, 20%, but I find it's quite low. It's almost as low as Sheng Siong, right? Yeah, but Sheng Siong's model is a bit different because Sheng Siong model is they compete by price, by economies of scale. Yeah, so they don't compete by price. So I'm quite surprised this is very low. But of course, I didn't do a research whether Intel is it this low as well. Is it like industry norm? Industry norm, huh? So let's come to this, right? As usual, we're going to play a game. So I just need my colleague help to put this up. So let's say we're going to play a game. The game is always buy or don't buy. Yeah, but before that, we need to use a Charlie Munger's framework. And you ask yourself, AMD in this case, to you. Remember, there's no right or wrong, but how do you feel? Do you think that AMD is basket A, a low risk, high return investment? Or basket B, a high risk, low return investment? Or basket C, a high risk, high return investment? So I'm going to give you like 5 seconds. Can you just look at the chat, right? All of you look at the chat. There should be a poll that pops up somewhere. So you just need to click. Now, after you have clicked, yep, we'll show you the poll result. But remember, it's not a popularity contest, so you don't buy because somebody said so, right? Or there's a higher vote. Yep. So I just wait for the results to just pop out for a couple of seconds because sometimes in the YouTube live, the chat, right, has maybe 5-second delay. Okay, so I'll just keep talking, right? Keep talking. So remember ABC. Now, so what does it mean? Ideally, we want it to be A. Whole low risk, high return. Yeah, if it's high risk, low return, obviously this is a no. Then C, right, high risk, high return is a bet. Maybe I can tell you a story that's being told to me by my working partner Liu Feng. He gave an analogy, what high risk, low return and all that. His analogy is quite funny to me. So he said something like this. He said, if we are hungry, and there's nothing in the house to eat except rice, then he said, where are these rice found? He said there are 3 locations. Now, the first location, which is the most ideal location, which is this low risk, high return, is you're hungry, you go to the kitchen, you open up the rice cooker, right? The rice are all inside. So it's near you, it's available, it's cooked. So you just need to go there, scoop, you eat. Yeah. So that belongs to basket A. Yeah, easily accessible. When you want it, it's already there available for you. Yeah, predictable because the rice is very cooked. Then he said that the next location of the rice is the rice is located in the storeroom of your house. Yeah, it's not cooked, it's raw. Yeah, so it's there, right? So in other words, you're hungry. You go to a storeroom, you walk a couple of steps, you open up the storeroom door, and then you can see the rice, but it's not cooked. So you need to still spend some effort. Then he said the third scenario, which is the least ideal, is your house, right? Inside a house, there is no rice at all. But this rice only exists in your dream. Yeah, so exists in your dream, that means it's not reachable. You have no idea whether in reality is there any rice or not. Huh? So the rice in the dream, right, belongs to this basket C. Yeah, so in the investment world, right, you can see the poll is already out. Huh? Yeah, so the highest score is high risk, low return, 52%, high risk, high return, 35%, and A, low risk, high return. Okay, so remember, I have no feelings, right, or label to say which one is right or wrong. Huh? So you ask yourself, for AMD, is it rice in the rice cooker? Is it rice in the storeroom? It's still available, but you still have to cook it yourself. Or is it rice in a dream? It hasn't come yet, and you have no idea whether will the dream become a reality. Okay? Now, in the real world, as in real world like this, most of the people who buy stocks, they have no idea what they are doing. Yeah, so they always based on hearsay. And to increase views on the YouTube, right? You know, some people, they talk about things that are, the rise is in the dream. Yeah, let me give you an example. I think about a couple of years ago, in 2021, when there was a bull market, I think there were quite a number of YouTubers talk about this company called C Limited. Yeah, and they recommend this C Limited because the revenue goes up exponentially, which was true. But we must understand that revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. So the profit was actually declining. So give a guess, what happened to C right now? I think a couple of months ago, the CEO, right, decided to retrench X number of employees to reduce the cost. I think only for the last 1 or 2 quarters, the company just became profitable. But remember way back in 2020, 2021, if you buy C, invest in C, the rise is in the dream. Whether will the rise eventually become a reality, nobody knows. So it's a high risk, high return game for C. So AMD you have to decide. So let's come back to here. Let me share with you other people's perspective. Now, Morningstar's perspective about when to buy. So Morningstar estimated that the intrinsic value of this AMD is 130. So which means that if the share price is below this 130, it's considered cheap. So in this case, it's 117, so it's considered cheap. Now, bearing in mind that this Morningstar's perspective, I have absolutely no idea where they get this 130. Do they use some form of AI algorithm? I'm not sure. But I don't trust AI to give me the intrinsic value. And I will never sell my house, take the money, and buy things because AI tell me to do so. So I will never do that. So that's Morningstar perspective. So let's look at another website, right, which is Guru Focus, a GF. Guru Focus estimated that the intrinsic value is 128, pretty similar to Morningstar. Yeah, I don't think they peep on each other's intrinsic value. So this is the black line. This represents the intrinsic value, yeah, which is 128. And then right now, share price is here, right? Can you see? Yeah, so again, Guru Focus perspective is undervalued. Morningstar's undervalued, Guru Focus undervalued. So let me just share with you another site. This is new. This is new, right? Now, this is another site. This is a target stock price, which is their intrinsic value. So this is the average intrinsic value because they have a high value, they have a low value, and then they put a mean. So this is the intrinsic value. You realize that the website, as much as they can, they try to adjust the intrinsic value as time passes. So as of 2023, the latest one, their intrinsic value is 133. If I go back, right, it's quite similar, right, 133. Yeah, around 130, right? And the share price is 117. So based on this website, it's also undervalued. So 3 websites say it's undervalued. But remember, we have no idea where this value comes from. Now, let me share with you my thought. What is the intrinsic value? So whether is it buy or sell or whatever. Now, this diagram, right, was shown by Hillary, which is the earnings per share. So in other words, we want the line to go up. If it's a positive number, that would be the best. So if I cover this part, right, you realize it looks nice. Looks nice, So AMD just turned profitable over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, it was accelerated by the pandemic here, right? We have no idea what's going to happen. And, you know, interestingly, when I look at this, do you realize that it drops? It drops, way below. It's almost coming over to here. But this is 1 year. So I'm just guessing, will this line go up? Will this line stay flat? Or will it go further? So what I did was I look at their okay, this the line crossover, but it's okay, right? I look at the earnings per share in the latest quarter. Actually, this number was also shown by Hillary. So you may notice that this quarter, right, which is the most recent quarter, do you realize it's negative? Yeah, so for this quarter, in other words, they are losing money. Okay, so remember, take a note at this. Pandemic, boom, can you see? The number went up. Yeah, so this is December 2022, which means that right now we are in the month of July, right? In the month of July, there should be 2 quarters result, Q1 and Q2. So in this case, the Q1, right, is negative 0.09. So my guess is unlikely it's going to be 0.84. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. Now, how do I know, right? I'll show you one more thing. Okay. Now, what is AMD's earnings for Q2? 0.58. First quarter, right? 0.58. Okay, let me show you the next one. Now, this AMD will report the second quarter's result Tuesday, August 1st. So right now, I think it's midway through July. So we will only know what is going to happen, right? But remember, this is a forecast, 0.58. That means for this new financial year, it consists of 2 quarters, Q1, Q2, Q3, and then Q4. So what do we have for Q1? We have negative 0.09. Yeah, so what is Q2? The estimate forecast, 0.58. Let's make it to 0.6. 0.6, And you add these 2 numbers up, what do you get? You have a positive 0.51. Correct? And if you take 0.51, if you extrapolate, let's say you multiply by 2, or even you multiply by 3. Yeah, multiply by 3, what do you get? Multiply by 2, you have a 1.0. Multiply by 3, you got 1.5. Correct, huh? Yep. So now the question is, eventually, right, can they get back to this 2.57? Yeah, so in order for this financial year to cross 2.57, wow, the Q3, right, and Q4 has to do very well. But what if they do not do well? Because the price is really sky high, right? What if they could not beat 2.57? What's going to happen? Will the price go up, stays the same, or come down? The price will plunge. Which means that even Morningstar says it's undervalued, Group Focus says it's undervalued, whichever website says it's undervalued, right? Now there's a high chance that they are going to be underperformed. And the moment you press buy today, if the share price collapses, you may not be able to take it. Yeah, so let's come back to here. Now this has been shown, I think, about 2 or 3 deep dive session away. So this is the flow, right, of the hype cycle. Now I'm not very sure where is this AI thing, right? Where are they? At which stage of this hype cycle is AI? Are they here? Technology trigger where everybody talks about it? Is it here? Yeah, where everybody eat, dream, and then pass away AI, right? Yeah. So over any party, everybody, oh yeah, AI. And then at this stage, remember, the expectations are exaggerated, as though they can do anything. But the moment the reality kicks in, it goes to this portion. That's where the share price will plunge. Yeah, I'm just suspecting that the AMD's share price is here. But based on, I think our previous session was NVIDIA, right? Yeah, NVIDIA is definitely here because their PE ratio is about 240, and the PE ratio was a 10-year high. So at least in terms of price, I suspect it's here. Yeah, in no time, I think the price will drop. Yeah, so I think we better wait for a while until AI reach a stage of enlightenment. Yeah, that's when the reality kicks in. They know exactly what AI can do and cannot do. Yeah, which brings us to this partner. Now, this is a athletic sport called hurdle. So hurdle, what does the athlete need to do? There is this hurdle, right, at a certain height. So athlete is supposed to run, jump over, and so on. Now, so if you ask Warren Buffett, right, which track does he want to run? Yeah, if given a choice, if there are tracks of hurdles with different height, and if Warren Buffett is going to run, which track will he choose? Obviously, Warren Buffett will choose the one with the lowest height. Yeah. So remember, our end point is just to win the race. Our end point is not to show off the difficulty of the hurdle. So Warren Buffett has a very nice quote. I don't look to jump over a 7-foot bar. I look around for 1-foot bars that I can simply step over. So what does it mean? Now, in the investment world, we do not have to find very difficult things like AI, which is a 7-foot bar. We just need to find one with a low hurdle. Yeah, so we take the path which is the easiest. Yeah, so remember, it's very important for us to know what not to do, whether it's AI your cup of tea, yeah, or something much easier so that you know what to do, huh? And remember, all our cash are hard-earned, unless we inherited a ton of cash from our parents. So hard-earned cash, we have to know exactly what to do and what not to do, which brings us to this very important slide. Now, ultimately, we want to build a small empire of businesses so that when we grow old and our hands and legs could no longer function the way we wanted to, the business works for us. So this is very important. And the only way for business to work for us is you own it in the first place, years ago. So if 100% represents, let's say, 10,000, right, of your hard-earned money, where do we want to deploy it? Yeah, we always have to keep 25% of cash. For Warren Buffett, I think he keeps around 30% of cash. In case the market crash, there's a recession, he has money to further average down the price of a good business. And the second one are ETFs. Some of you who are paying attention to what we do, ETF stands for Exchange Traded Funds. And of course, for last one is specific company. And today we have covered AMD. And previously we have covered Adobe, A-D-B-E, I think. Yeah, there's so many ticker symbols, right? And what was the next one? NVIDIA. Yeah, NVIDIA, and so on, Meta, and so on. Yeah, so I'm going to share with you a piece of good news. The good news is each piece of this is going to generate some form of income. Some may be higher, some may be lower. But the most important thing is just in our coming week, which is next week, next Tuesday. I almost forgot it's next Tuesday. On the 25th of July 2013, we are organizing an on-site event. On-site, not Zoom, right? If you stay at home, you will not see anything. You must come physically to our office, which is 3 Shenton Way, Shenton House, and we are running an event, and this one, there's no sales. In case somebody thinking that we may be selling you something, no, nothing, zero sale. It's a no sales, non-profit event. And we give it a name called Empower Your Financial Future. And the reason why we are organizing this is because we are concerned that some people are like me or maybe Hillary. We are not so techy. We want to do something simple. And if we can do something simple, then you take lesser time, right, for us to build a portfolio. Now, imagine if you can build a small empire. Maybe it consists of 500 companies using just a mere Sing dollars of $100 per month, and yet you can build this portfolio. Yeah, isn't it amazing? So the only question left is who are the people that's going to make this event amazing, right? Yep. So you can see 3 faces here. Of course, you know who is this Jack Ma lookalike, and then Hillary. So let me just start off with the first one, cash. Now, Hillary is going to talk about this mechanism called T-bills. Now, the wonderful thing about T-bills is, number one, it's not going to make anyone rich, so just hang on there. So, but it's issued by our local authority called Monetary Authority of Singapore, which means that unless the Singapore government collapses, your capital is 100% protected, and you'll be able to generate a certain percentage of income that beat most of the banks. So, if you want to give money to a bank, must as well look at T-bills. So, this is the part where Hillary comes in. What? Now, the second part is when I talk about 500 companies, I'm talking about not only S&P 500. Now, I know some of you, if you're following us, I keep talking about S&P 500 since the beginning of time. Yeah, bear market, I'm talking about it. Bull market, I'm talking about it. So, on this day, I will still talk about S&P 500, yes, as a foundation. But I will introduce another interesting ETF. But I'm not going to tell you unless you come. Okay, and the track record for this interesting ETF has beaten S&P 500. And again, you can use $100 to invest. Yeah, so this is me. I'll talk about this. So I'm the second speaker. And the final one, which is very, very precious. I just spoke to him this afternoon, right? We have invited one speaker. His name is called Leonard. Now, Leonard comes from a company called TD Ameritrade. They have many branches. They have one branch in Singapore called TD Ameritrade Singapore. Just to let you know that TD Ameritrade is the big 4 brokerage firm in the entire US. It's like the accounting for big 4, right? So TD Ameritrade is one of the big 4. Yep. So we are very glad that one rep of the big 4, at least in the Singapore branch, is willing to come to a humble place. And he's going to talk about, the consumer staples sector. If you look at the past historical track record for about 30 years, I think consumer staples has also beaten S&P 500. But because I don't have Leonard's slide, so I do not know exactly what he's going to say. So the only way for you to find out is to come. Now, you may see this link, right, that is being posted in the chat. Yeah, in the chat. So in the chat, you can see Empower Our Financial Future, 25th, 7 p.m., 10 p.m. So this is on site, right? The link is over there. Now, just to let you know that if you are graduates, don't click on the link first. You're grad, just hang on. Now, if you're not our graduates, not our graduates, you just need to click on this link. An Eventbrite page will pop out. You just fill in the information. Just to let you know that for non-grads, it's $10. $10, So for the $10 that we collected, every single cent will be donated to charity. Yeah, $10 right now, you can't do much. You can maybe watch one movie, right? But after you watch one movie, you can't really make money. Yeah, or you want to watch Indiana Jones. Yeah, be entertained for just 2 hours. So remember, $10 for non-grad. But if you are a grad, oh, by the way, I purposely leave this shortcut over here because once this video is over, right, the link may go a bit missing. So in case you're watching a replay of this, now take note, you just type in the URL, follow bit.ly. You must follow this, right? If it's cap, it's cap. If it's small size, small size. Okay, just type this in, click on it. You reach a page, fill up all the relevant information. Yeah, pay that $10. But if you are a grad, the good news is there's a separate link because for grads you don't really have to pay. So what you need to do is you go to our VIA Singapore closed group, look at this post over here, and obviously you just click on see more. You will see a special link just for grads where you don't have to pay $10. See, $10 we also want to see for you. Okay, So that's all. Today, again, the few of us are serving you. This is me, Hillary, we have Susie over here. Irfan has went for reservice. So right now he's saving Singapore. Yeah, with the M60. We'll see him next time. Also remember, the link is here. For non-grads, please click on it. It's only $10. We donate to charity. So again, just to let you know that, yeah, thanks. We sincerely appreciate our time, and Hillary has also put in a lot of effort, and today we have a team of 3 who are helping to do all this back-end work. So remember, myself and together a team with my colleagues, we are from VIA. We stand for Value Investing Academy. Remember, our mission is we care to make you a better investor. So remember, non-grad, please click on the link, fill out information, and I shall see you next Tuesday. So have a good rest and see you soon. Goodbye.